Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to another fantastic day of online learning. So today's lesson starts off with having a look at yesterday's activity of task 8 on page 14 of the workbook. So if you can get out your work from yesterday and self-assess against the answers. So if a plumber refuses to repair, replace or refund the hot water cylinder that is newly installed but doesn't work, then yes, the consumer can go to the disputes tribunal to get the issue settled. Lord is upset to find that a new song is being used in an ad without her permission. No, well, that's an issue relating to intellectual property. So Lord owns the rights to her new song, and that's being used without her permission. So that's a dispute that the disputes tribunal won't be able to consider. A flatmate has stopped paying their share of the rent. Well, yes, that is an issue that the disputes tribunal will be able to consider. Your neighbour backs their car into your bike and destroying it, but claims that it's your fault. Well, yes, that is an issue the disputes tribunal can decide on. You want to replace the old and broken fence between your house and the neighbour, but they don't want to. Well, yes, that is a fencing dispute, and the disputes tribunal will be able to decide on that. You lose your job at a pet store after accidentally letting all the puppies out. Well, no, that's an employment dispute, which will go to the Employment Relations Authority, so that's not an issue for our disputes tribunal. Your former friend refuses to return the laptop you lent them. Yes, absolutely. That's the type of issue that the disputes tribunal will be able to consider. Sadly, your great auntie has passed away, and strangely, she's left all her money to the nurse that was hired to care for her in her last few months. No, that's not an issue that the disputes tribunal will consider as it relates to a will. So moving in to consider a bit more about the disputes tribunal and how to make a claim. So if you're seeking to get some help on making a claim to the disputes tribunal, you can go to your local Citizens Advice Bureau or Community Law Centre, which are free advice centres which the government helps fund, where you can turn up and get some expert advice on legal and various civic matters that will help you with preparing your argument and getting advice on what evidence that you might need to bring when raising an issue to disputes tribunal. Or you could look to hire a lawyer, but remember your lawyer cannot be there to represent you at the disputes tribunal, but they can advise you in relation to your preparation and advise you on whether you actually have a claim to raise to the disputes tribunal. The disputes tribunal does allow people to bring a support person to the hearings. This might be a member of your whānau or a friend, just there to provide you with emotional support, because it is potentially going to be a stressful situation for some people going into conflict with another, and that support person is not allowed to speak at the hearing unless the referee asks that support person to weigh in. If you're an applicant and you're under the age of 18, or you have a disability that impedes you or prevents you from making your case, you are able to ask the disputes tribunal for permission to use a representative. And a representative will present your case on your behalf. However, that representative cannot be a lawyer or an experienced advocate, so someone who is potentially a professional at representing people at disputes, and that's because our disputes tribunal is meant to be an informal and quick and inexpensive process in bringing in lawyers and experienced advocates to argue cases on people's behalf will potentially make the disputes tribunal run against those objectives. Interpreters, of course, are provided free of charge by the disputes tribunal, which is highly important in our multicultural and multilingual society, and to cater to our deaf community. The hearing structure. Well, the referee will kick it off by introducing everyone and explaining how the hearing will run. Both parties are given the opportunity to explain their side of the dispute, with the applicant speaking first. After both parties have spoken, there will be a discussion about what is disagreed on. What do the respondent and the applicant disagree on in the matter? Any parties that are called, the witnesses are then called in to the hearing to give their evidence, and both parties do have an opportunity to question those witnesses. The referee does try to guide our parties on settling the dispute between them, but if they if they do come to a decision, that decision can be made binding, and the referee will help enforce that decision between the two. But if they cannot agree, then the referee does have that power to make a decision which the parties are going to need to accept. The referee does have that power to provide the decision later on to the parties, which they can provide via the post. This decision that the referee makes in a dispute is called an order, and it is legally binding, i.e. it must be followed by the applicant and the respondent. The order sets out how much is to be paid or what property is to be returned amongst the parties, and when this action or payment needs to be carried out by. Parties cannot demand payment or request that the action be taken out earlier than is required by the order. Now, the Disputes Tribunal will not be following up with the parties to ensure that the order has been carried out, so it is very important that our parties exchange contact details with each other after or before the hearing, so that they are able to follow up and arrange that the order is carried out between themselves. Now, the Disputes Tribunal order not being followed. Sadly, in some cases, our parties will not follow the Disputes Tribunal's order. In the first instance, the applicant should remind the respondent that they must follow the order. Remember, our order is legally binding, so the applicant will have the support of the justice system in requiring the respondent to carry out that order, to make payment or return property as the referee has decided. Now, if our respondent does not comply with the order after being reminded by our applicant, the applicant is able to apply to the district court to get that order enforced. Alternatively, our applicant could hire a debt collection agency to see if they can collect payment from our respondent. Alternatively, our applicant might look to hire a lawyer to act on their behalf. Of course, this would be logical if we were applying to the district court to try and take the respondent to court to get a judge to make a judgment on this, to add to the weight of that enforcement. Or alternatively, our lawyer could simply send a formal letter to the respondent. And a formal letter from a lawyer clearly outlining the responsibilities of the respondent and the consequences of not following the order. That formal letter might just be enough to get the respondent to carry out the order without needing to go to court. Finally, in the case that the order by the Disputes Tribunal required the respondent to carry out an action which was non-monetary, so for example, repairing a defective product, but our respondent has not carried out the order, then the applicant can reapply back to the Disputes Tribunal to order money compensation instead, because it might just be easier to get money compensation from our respondent than to try and get them to take time away from doing other jobs as part of their business to go back and repair our defective product. So that is the conclusion of the Disputes Tribunal content. And to conclude today's learnings on the Disputes Tribunal, you are tasked with completing Task 9 on page 15 of the workbook. Now to my class, today we've got our Zoom meeting at 12:30. So I look forward to catching up with all of you there, where you'll have an opportunity to ask me questions about any of the course content that we've covered throughout our online learning part of the course. Also, I'm looking forward to hearing and looking at some of your presentations on Task 21 of Unit 8, which was our marketing ad, and also we'll be able to have an opportunity just to clarify where we're heading in terms of the Term 4 examination. Any questions or issues, please get in touch with your teacher. Kia kaha.